Last week, members of the National Institute for Legislative Studies put together an induction course for members of the State Houses of Assembly. At that event, Senate President David Mark advised state legislators to discontinue with what is now becoming a trend of impeaching principal officers in the State Houses of Assembly, as well as governors and deputy governors. Now, we put together a report to look at this issue. Barely 3 weeks to the end of his tenure, Enugu State Governor Sullivan Chime is facing impeachment. 14 members of the State House of Assembly have accused the governor of forging a 12 billion naira supplementary budget, putting this as grounds for his impeachment. While the impeachment saga is ongoing, the Enugu State Deputy Governor was kicked out of office by the State Assembly last year. In Ekiti, the State Assembly has been tied up in a showdown with Governor Ayo Fayose in another impeachment saga. The impeachment attempt against the Nasarawa State Governor is still fresh in the memory of Nigerians. The leadership of the National Assembly and some federal lawmakers have condemned what it described as sudden and hastily executed impeachments by state legislators against its principal officers or state executives.
As state legislators, you must restrain yourselves from the excessive use of the constitutional provision that empowers you to impeach either your speakers, executive governors, or their deputies. Impeaching a public elected official is a very serious legislative process and must not be abused or taken for a joke.
When you try to impeach a governor or even the president of a country, you must make sure in the first instance that due process has been followed, because there are procedures for impeachment. You just don't wake up and say you're going to impeach a governor. So number one, you must follow the procedures for impeachment. And then secondly, it is important the impeachment that you want to do, is it in the interest of the state or is it for selfish gains? Where it is in the interest of the state and where clearly there has been an abuse of power either by the president or by the governor of that state, I repeat, clearly documented incidences, then of course, yes, you have a right to go ahead with that impeachment. But when it is for selfish gains, for personal gains, then that now becomes an abuse of the process.
A lawyer says some state legislators are using impeachment as a weapon in their arsenal.
The framers of the Constitution believe it should be used rarely, on rare occasions. It's not every infraction that should attract the deployment of the impeachment process. It should rather be such infractions, such offenses that either rubbish the Constitution or have the capacity to bring down the system.
However, a federal lawmaker disagrees.
If a governor abuses his office and abuses the privileges given to him by the people he's governing, of course the State Assembly has the right and the authority to bring him back to his senses. So I don't see that as abusing the privileges, abusing the powers of the office. It's part of the processes of a legislature.
The relationship between state houses of assembly and state governors in Nigeria has often been from two extremes, patronizing or rocky. At one extreme, some Nigerians see state houses of assembly as being appendages of state governments.
Parliamentarians across the divide are hostages to vested interest, whether you say the governors or some other forces, because sometimes you find out that if the governor runs foul of the powers that be at the center, the power at the center has the capacity to swing the assembly against the governor. So you find out that it's not just being appendages of the governor or being puppets in the hand of the puppeteer, the governors, but rather vested interests, some of them within the state, some of them outside the state, control what happens. You find out that the lawmakers are more or less pursuing goals that are different from what they told us before we elected them. I can tell you for sure that in states where the governor is in control, in quote, in control of the state structures, the speaker is only answerable to the governor. And once you fall out with the governor, you're out of their seat.
Some incoming state legislators suggest solutions to this problem.
It's time for the House of Assembly to assert themselves, to make sure that they have their first-line votes and first-line funding. That is the only way they can be strengthened in the democratic experience that we're having.
As a new administration is all set to resume office in a matter of days, what Nigerians would want to see is synergy between state assemblies and state governments to aid the country in achieving its developmental goals, increase transparency and accountability, and curb corruption. What should the incoming administration of retired General Muhammadu Buhari give priority attention to on resumption of office? A social analyst, Mr. Mufutau Yunisa, tells us.
1, transportation. Right now, Nigeria ranked the 2nd worst road traffic accident cases in the world. And if you look at that, why? Because our main focus of transportation is by motor car. That's a big problem. With a massive size of 170 million, Nigeria cannot afford to be using motor car all the time, but a rail system that is effective and functioning. In addition to that, the role of electricity cannot be overemphasized. We need electricity in this country, which is stable and which is reliable. Corruption is a big problem. We have a big problem with corruption, and we just have to get out of it. We cannot afford the system of impunity. Corruption has to go. Education is so abysmal. It is so bad today that if your child must have good education, you just must be rich. It's a big shame. I was in Australia in 2011. I was in South Korea in 2013. Children there, primary and secondary, are free of charge. University education is there, and if you're from a poor family, there's a system there that you can collect a loan or grants and you pay it back. But right now, it is so bad that if you are from a poor family, then you don't have opportunity in Nigeria.
What do you think should be the role of a vice president in a democratic dispensation?
The role of vice president is, number 1, according like the Constitution had said, 1, to do as requested by Mr. President, and 2, in case Mr. President fell ill, went on vacation, and some other things or death, then Mr. Vice President may have to step in during this period. And I feel that that role should be okay. Otherwise, we may have a competing interest. We have very high caliber executive right now. I don't know about future. We have a president with integrity. And we have a vice president, a professor of law, who has a lot of knowledge, a lot of skill. His role and achievement in Lagos State is well documented. So I feel that Mr. President-elect, if he gets there, you should see him as an asset and not just an appendage. And they should utilize his knowledge adequately